Now, you may be surprised to learn that this day, Mothering Sunday, actually originated in the United States, even though, of course, it is observed around the world, not always on the same day. I spoke to a Russian friend of mine earlier in my morning, and she said in Russia they don't celebrate until October. But generally speaking, in many countries around the world, we are all celebrating and marking the same day today. And in fact, it started in the 19th century and it was in the years before the Civil War. And there were clubs, I guess you could call them, where women gathered together to teach each other how to properly care for their children. Interesting concept and quite lovely, actually. And later, when these clubs became a unifying force in regions of the country that, of course, were still very divided and very impacted by the Civil War, gathering together Union and Confederate soldiers to promote reconciliation. Imagine that these clubs of women were also forces of peace and reconciliation. Then the abolitionist and the suffragette by the name of Julia Ward Howe campaigned for what she called Mother's Peace Day to be celebrated on an annual basis. And in Boston in 1870, she wrote what she titled Mother's Day Proclamation. And it was a call to action. And she was asking that mothers unite in promoting world peace. So that's the genesis of today. Isn't that glorious? Uniting in promoting world peace. And her words were eerily, and might I also say shamefully, still relevant to where we find ourselves 156 years later. Here's the briefest of excerpts from quite a long proclamation of what she wrote. Arise, then, she said, women of the day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether our baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we, women of one country, will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own, and it says, disarm, disarm. The sword of murder is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence vindicate possession. As I say, eerily still relevant today. So that's the genesis of why we call today Mother's Day or Mothering Sunday. But now to the essence of this day, and perhaps it's an invitation for us into something larger. Perhaps it invites us to reflect on the spirit of mothering itself. Because mothering is not limited to biology. And of course, it's not limited to gender. And it certainly is not limited to perfection. Mothering is a way of being in the world. It's the impulse that we all feel at various times and various strengths to nurture life itself, to protect what is vulnerable, to encourage growth and growth in all of its guises, and to offer comfort and to hold hope for another person when they cannot hold it for themselves. And if we think about it carefully, most of us can name people in our lives who have mothered us, as Sylvie so beautifully and powerfully shared today, whether or not they are in fact our biological mothers. Perhaps it was a teacher who saw something in us before we saw it in ourselves. A grandparent, a neighbor, a friend, a mentor, a boss or a colleague, a community member who listened without judgment, someone who offered us encouragement at just the right moment, someone who fed us, whether that is literally or spiritually or emotionally or psychologically, fed us and helped us. And many of us carry the imprint of such people in our heart. I know I do. And I would like to extend that thought about mothering, not, of course, just being within the gender of the female, but to tell you that someone who mothered me at a time of great need, when I was a child who was lost and very frightened, and in a desperate situation at home, and he saw me and gently and lovingly supported me. I would have been, I think, 7 when he first came into my life as my teacher, my primary school teacher. And you know, when you're asked for a secure password, and very often there are 3 questions, prompts for you to help you to remember your password. And I always love it when one of the questions is, who was your favorite teacher? And I always give his name. And I'm going to share it with you, actually. His name was Peter McNair, and he was a Maori because I grew up in New Zealand. And he loved me in a way that altered the course of my life, and I remain eternally indebted to him. I would also like to think that, of course, many of us have also offered that kind of care to others without maybe even realizing. And I don't think he realized in my life that the spirit of mothering lives wherever love becomes active. It appears in what appear to be simple things, meals cooked for those in need, hands held at hospital bedsides, late night conversations, patient listening, forgiveness, advocacy, teaching. And I know that there are many of us in our community who have been teachers of one type or another, myself included, in protecting the earth for future generations, another form of mothering, and in creating spaces where others can flourish. Mothering, in its deepest sense, is an expression of love that says, your life matters. Your becoming matters, and I will help you grow. And yet, if we're honest, mothering is not always easy or uncomplicated. For some, Mother's Day actually carries grief. Some, as I said at the opening, mourn mothers who have died, and some carry painful relationships or wounds that have never fully healed. Some longed to become mothers and could not, and some chose not to become mothers, as Sylvie said, and yet sometimes those who have chosen or made such a choice still feel society's expectations on them. Some are exhausted from caregiving. Thank you, Arlene, for reminding us that caregiving is also an act of mothering. And some, of course, are trying to mother others while, and this is something we all have to care for, running on empty themselves. So a compassionate spiritual community makes room rather for all these truths. And in Unitarian Universalism, it calls us not into sentimental simplicity, but into honest compassion. We honor very often joy and sorrow together. We recognize that families are beautiful and messy, that healing is complicated and it's not linear, that loving is imperfect. And we do so honoring that all of this can, of course, be all at once. And perhaps that is why this broader idea of mothering matters so much, because it reminds us that care itself is sacred. The theologian and writer Henri Nouwen once wrote that one of the greatest human needs is to feel truly welcomed. And I love, Sylvie, that you mentioned that in your story of the welcome that you felt in the Myers family. To feel welcomed and to know that we belong. Isn't that, at its very best, part of what mothering offers? The experience of being received warmly into life. What a transformative message that can be for us at any time. So imagine if we widened that spirit beyond family alone. Imagine if our congregations, our schools, our neighborhoods, and indeed our nation embodied more of that nurturing spirit. What if we measured strength not by competition and achievement, but also by tenderness and compassion? What if we valued caregiving as much as productivity? What if we honored emotional wisdom, or EQ, as much as we do with intellectual ability and IQ? What if we understood gentleness not as weakness, but actually as courage? And the world, as we know right now, often rewards hardness, toughness, being driven, speed, consumption, dominance. But I believe that the spirit of mothering offers and teaches us another way of being. It teaches attentiveness, patience, presence, and something we've spoken about a lot together, interdependence. It reminds us on a continual basis that none of us arrived here alone, and none of us thrives alone. Even nature reveals this truth. Mother Earth reminds us of this constantly and reminds us that it is our mother. She is our mother. The soil grows food. Trees offer shade and oxygen. Water sustains all of life. The changing seasons teach us the cycles of rest and renewal. And yet, as we know, and the video showed earlier, Mother Earth is often taken for granted. while endlessly, compassionately giving. So perhaps one of the invitations of this day is to reclaim a deeper ethic of care. And by that I mean care for ourselves, care for one another, and care for the living world. And there's one more thing before closing that I would like to say about mothering itself. Real mothering is not perfection. No human being mothers perfectly, and I'm certain all the mothers in our midst know this very well. No parent gets everything right. No caregiver can ever meet every need of those for whom they are caring. So the spirit of mothering is not perfection, it's presence. It's trying again. It's loving imperfectly but sincerely. And it's just simply showing up. And many of us, of course, can remember those non-flawless moments that were not flawless, but they were faithful. Someone sitting beside us when we were hurting. Someone cheering us on. Someone making us soup when we were sick. Someone believing in us when we had forgotten how to believe in ourselves. Small acts of care become sacred memories. And I want to tribute someone every time I think of this. When my world literally imploded, I was living in Sydney in Australia, and everything that I'd woken up that morning and thought was my reality disappeared in a nanosecond. And everything that was real to me had gone. And what happened? A friend who I had not really considered incredibly close to me, but very dear to me, said, "Drop everything, Pippa, come to me, we will help you." And day by day, hour by hour, moment by moment, she and her family cared and nurtured for me and helped me to rebuild my life. I remain not only grateful, but I know that I am who I am today because of such love and care and nurture. So in closing, I'd like to say that today is not only to honor those who've mothered us, but it's also an invitation for us to each of us in our own ways to embody the spirit of mothering. Who right now in our lives needs encouragement? Who might require our presence as we listen and just listen, maybe not even comment or advise or try to fix? Who needs protection? Who needs gentleness? Who needs someone to remind them that they matter and that they belong? And equally important, the question of today, the invitation is, how might we mother ourselves? How might we speak to ourselves more kindly? How might we rest more often and more honestly? How might we forgive ourselves more gently? And how might we tend our own spirits with compassion? The more deeply, I believe, that we nurture life within ourselves and around us, the more healing becomes possible. So today, may we honor all who mother in visible and invisible ways. May we honor and give thanks to those who gave us life, the gift of life, those who have sustained us in one way or another, and for all who've helped us to become who we are today. And from today, may we each carry forward the spirit and the heart of mothering, and find in ourselves the courage to nurture, the willingness to care, and a deep recognition that every life is worthy of love, including our own. Blessed be. Thank you, everybody.
If you like this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video. Thank you.